Housing and homelessness prevention services. So we continue to work on achieving our strategic directions and our objectives and priority action items. And we do use the 10-year housing and homelessness plan as a reference guide in making all of our decisions regarding our housing and homelessness services, particularly related to how we use the federal and provincial funding that comes to us for affordable housing and homelessness prevention. And so once Council approves this report, it will be sent to the Ministry of Housing. It has actually, a draft has already been sent to the Ministry of Housing, Mr. Chair, but we will confirm Council's approval of the document, and then we will place the document on our website, which will fulfill the requirement to release it to the public. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable with this report and I will move the recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Sonnenberg. Any further questions? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Heidi. Heidi, thank you. It's a very good report. I just have one question for you when it's on page 53 of our agenda under the actions, and you've heard me ask about this one before. And this is the action item that said, support the creation of a local food strategy that includes skill building programs, cooking clubs, collective kitchens, community gardens. And it shows no action to date on this initiative. So I'd like you to comment on that if you would, if assuming that is still the case of no action. And I am thinking particularly around the initiative of developing a local food strategy that was underway 2 or 3 years ago and then did admittedly kind of go on the back burner. But the other thing that is happening is things like the development at Indwell, former Hambledon Hall, where they've developed garden beds, the development downtown and the old LCBO that churches out serving are doing to, among other things, have a community kitchen and a teaching kitchen. So don't those kinds of initiatives help to achieve some progress on this item?
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Oliver, yes, absolutely. Those individual actions of individual developers and community groups do contribute towards having a local food strategy. I think where we have indicated that there has been no action to date is around the development of a comprehensive local food strategy. So, and that is something that in the past we have looked to our colleagues in public health to take the lead on. But certainly you are correct, Councillor, that there are lots of activities going on across Norfolk County that support the production and the consumption of local food.
Go ahead, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you for that, Heidi. And I did realize that. I know it's another department essentially that would take the lead. So perhaps I can redirect the question in part to Ms. Miranda, Mr. Chairman. Marlene, is this one still on the books for us to facilitate, support, encourage, coerce, whatever term you want to do to see it get done at some point?
Through the chair to Councillor Oliver, through the food insecurity work that's being done by the dietitians, it is one of the focus areas and will be something that we will work towards moving forward.
Thank you very much. So no further questions. Do we have a mover of the motion? Councillor Height, followed by Mayor Luke. All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to the next one, Staff Report, Ontario Works Service Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Council, this is also an annual report that Council sees. It is the annual Ontario Works Service Plan for the year 2017-18. The Ontario Works Service Plan is a requirement of the Ministry of Community and Social Services, and decisions about our funding for the Ontario Works program are made on the basis of the service plan. So in the service plan, we need to do an environmental scan of our area, we need to make some comments about our local labor market, and we need to describe our service delivery model and the strategies that we will undertake in order to work with participants of the Ontario Works program to move them along the employment continuum. The employment continuum being from a state of being unable to obtain and retain employment all the way up to a state of financial independence and eventual exit from the Ontario Works program. So this, once this service plan is completed, we will forward to the Ministry of Community and Social Services, along with our budget document, which has already been sent, which was created in collaboration with our financial analyst in the Financial Services Department, and then we will be in compliance. We will be in continued compliance with the Ministry of Community and Social Services.
Thank you. Questions? We'll start with Councillor Black.
Question, but I can see that Heidi's raring to go with this and get busy to move it forward, so I would accommodate her by moving the recommendation contained within the report.
Thank you very much for that. And Councillor Sonnenberg, you're seconding that?
Yeah.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Now you may ask your question.
I don't have a question, I have a few comments.
Please.
You know, to end poverty in this county and elsewhere, you must work. To work, you need basic skills. And therein lies the problem, as I see it. Many people have no job skills whatsoever. There are lots of jobs out there that require very little formal education. Just the ability to do some basic physical work. Basic skills. So, for example, there are these lots of workers, but who are just not employable. Agriculture, for instance, will cannot or will not work in the field. We have to go around the world and bring in thousands of workers to do the work that require a lot of knowledge that people won't do. The trucking industry is crying for drivers. We're taking drivers from Pakistan, from Poland, from Russia to drive our trucks. I know young people in the area in their 20s who don't even have a driver's license and don't even show any inclination of ever getting one. It just follows on. The building industry. The building trades are crying for help, but there are people out there who can't drive a nail, use a tape measure, or push a wheelbarrow. All basic skills that any body should know. The fast food industry. Every fast food restaurant on the highway is looking for help. You know, this country is surviving on burgers, pizzas, and donuts. And the fast food industry can't find work. The local car plants can't keep people on the job. There's a sign out front constantly, hiring, apply within. People will work for a couple of days and just leave their job, don't even tell their supervisor that they're leaving, and just walk out of the building. This is too boring. This is too repetitious. I can't stand up my feet all day. Just can't perform work. Some basic skills, a little work ethic, and will make it in life. For some reason, we're losing the battle. Just a specific instance. My son was a millwright. He was on a job one day. A young man who was in training came up to him and asked him if he tape measure. And he says, sure. Take it, but don't forget where you got it. Bring it back. By the way, what are you measuring? The young man says, the boss sent me for a 3/4 inch wrench. And I need to tape measure to measure the wrench. I can identify a 3/4 inch wrench from an 11/16 from 5/8 from across the room. I'm not even a mechanic. And besides, the wrench is stamped right on it, 3/4 inch. And he needs a tape measure to go find the right wrench. We are really losing the battle here.
I thought that was a very depressing speech. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, he's a millwright, so he was just double checking. So I'm looking at page 78, and it says here, some of the data that's here it came from the Workforce Planning Board of the Grand Eries. In 2014, the local labor market plan, and again, down a little further, the 2015 Grand Erie Adult Learning Research Guide. And what it says here is that we've lost, between June 2013 and June 2014, we lost 125 businesses. And if you read in the next paragraph, it says that we're behind in our education stuff as well, like where we lag the province. And I think that's where Councillor Sonnenberg was getting at, is that the skilled workforce just isn't there. And what the best we get from Grand Erie is 5-year-old data. What are they doing to fix this problem for us? 'Cause, like, I see part of it, the business attraction side, Norfolk County doesn't do a lot of, but what about the education side of it? I know from my talks with business owners, it's really difficult to get skilled help here. And there are a lot of jobs for people, or else they leave. So I'm wondering, is there, like, do you meet with these guys often enough where you can have some more input into what happens, Heidi?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, certainly we stay in contact with all of our partners on a regular basis and are working with them continually to identify what the needs are and how we can meet those needs. Certainly, I'll take those comments back to our employment services coordinator and find out from him how often he is checking in with this group and what kind of, specifically what kind of support that we are offering to them and that they in turn are offering to us. To answer the question generally about what we're doing to assist to educate and retrain people, we have a dedicated employment services team within the Ontario Works program, and we have staff who assist our clients in getting their grade 12, their high school diplomas, if they don't already have it, to apply to college or university, and OSAP, if that is a goal of theirs, or to look at apprenticeship programs or other skill development programs. One of the examples that Councillor Sonnenberg gave around trucking, we have clients who go and get their AZ license and become truck drivers. That's one of the programs that we encourage clients to take if that's a career that they're interested in. And then we have career coaches who are working with our clients once they are employed to keep that employment, so that we're not seeing recidivism and so that we're not seeing people come back on the system once they have exited. I would say that one of the biggest challenges that we are having is the ability for people to get adequate work so that they can be financially independent and exit the system. So in looking at our goals and targets, we exceeded our target last year for the percentage of our caseload that has employment earnings, but the amount of money that those people made went down from one year to the next. So that's a real challenge when people are not making a living wage. They're working, but they're just not able to make enough money to fully exit the Ontario Works program.
Thank you for that. So if I was to walk into the Ontario Works office, would I find a continuing education booklet that so many school boards put out to the people?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, I will double check our reception area in the morning, but I have seen booklets from Fanshawe College in our office, as well as other educational institutions that are outside of our region.
Okay, one last trick question, Mr. Chair, and that would be, how do you think that the minimum wage increase up to $15 will help these people with the living wage? Will they get enough hours to get off and out of the system permanently?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, the minimum wage decision is a provincial policy statement, and we do not yet know how that's going to intersect with the Ontario Works program. We have not done a living wage study for Haldimand and Norfolk, so we don't yet know whether $15 an hour is actually above or below what would be considered a living wage for our service area. So it would be premature for me to comment on what the impact is going to be on our Ontario Works clients.
Any further comments, questions? I will say, Ms. Van Dyke, you answered that last question very well, almost like a politician. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Columbus, second by Councillor Geisens. All in favor? We received this information. All right, that brings us to our next staff report, which is staff report dealing with children's service child care expanding funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Council. The Ministry of Education has set as a target to increase the number of licensed childcare spaces for children ages 0 to 6 by 100,000 over the next 5 years across the province of Ontario. In Haldimand and Norfolk, our share of that goal is the creation of 100 new spaces. We can either achieve that through the expansion of our existing licensed childcare centers or through the creation of new licensed childcare centers. In an effort to assist the municipality to achieve our part of the goal, the Ministry of Education has provided additional childcare funding, both capital and operating. So the purpose of this report is to accept those funds and to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the necessary transfer payment agreements with the Ministry of Education.
Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question with respect to page 101, and it's under financial services comments. It talks about the breakdown here of the 1.310 million, and it talks about $131,072 for administration. Is that what goes to the consultant?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Columbus, that will be the pot of money out of which we will pay the consultant, but the consulting contract, we will endeavor that it would not be that maximum. We also would use our administration funding towards our internal costs of the Children's Services team to support these initiatives.
So for the 100 places, 100 children, then you wouldn't divide that number by 100 then, because it will be less than that, right?
Mr. Chair, that's correct. We don't, in order to achieve our goal of 100 new spaces in Haldimand and Norfolk, we will first be going out to our existing childcare centers to see if there are opportunities to expand. If we cannot reach that goal within our existing system, then we will undertake an RFP process for the construction of new licensed childcare, and at that point, the financial costs would be part of the evaluation process. But it's not a you're correct, Councillor, it's not a cost per space, it's an overall project cost.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Height, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair.
Go on, you
Through you
can.
to Heidi. I wanted to talk on that consultant's money as well. $131,000 for a consultant. Don't we have staff that could do that job and be billed that same amount?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, the Children's Services staff team consists of 6 FTEs, all of which are working at over capacity right now. This is just one of the new initiatives that is coming down to the municipality from the Ministry of Education. We're going to be talking about another one in just a few minutes that is very significant. And so I am confident in telling you that internally we do not have the capacity to undertake this work with the staff team that we have. The $131,000 is the full 10% that the municipality can keep from this funding. And it is consistently, when we are permitted the opportunity to keep funds for administration, we maximize the amount that we can keep for our program administration, not only to outsource to consultants when it is appropriate, but to offset the costs of our internal administration. So that includes salaries and benefits of our existing staff. So we won't know how much the consultant will cost until we undertake the request for proposal process.
Okay, so when you're making that decision, do you look at the option of contracting a position for 6 months? Because one of the problems with the consultant is they do a bunch of work, they leave you a bunch of paper, it sits on the shelf, and they leave. At least with a contract position, they could work with your 6 FTEs for 6 months, maybe help them out with their caseload and move everything ahead while educating the entire team.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, I would be very supportive of a contract position, and if council would like to amend the recommendations to change from a consultant to a contract position, staff would absolutely go forward on that. We are in suggesting a consultant, we are working within the direction that council has previously given around adding staff to our existing complements.
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess, like in our strategic plan, it says that, staff would bring forward a business case, and in that business case, you could have brought that as an option, and it would fit in our existing policies. So, but what I'm hearing from you is you need someone here to change that front part, that recommendation as an option, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, we would not be able to move forward with developing a job description and recruiting for a contract position without council approval to do that through the recommendations that are contained within the report.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, so what do you need changed specifically on page 63?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, if I could suggest some wording. In the last recommendation, council could either, after the using a request for proposal process, you could either add or by hiring a contract employee, or the other option would be to take out the language about the consultant and replace it with council authorize staff to hire a temporary full-time employee to undertake this work. And I would suggest that it would be a minimum of a year that we would require the staff.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't see that spot in there, and further that. Council authorized the mayor and clerk manager of council services to sign the Ontario Works service contract with the Ministry of Community and Social Services for the delivery of the Ontario Works program in Haldimand and Norfolk counties. I don't see where it handcuffs you.
Mr. Chair,
99 is the thing? Oh, I went too far back. Yeah. Okay, for the program to be... So, Mr. Chair, if I could ask the clerk to fix that up for us, leave them the option of the contract position and the consultant, whichever they deem appropriate. How would the master of verbiage word that?
I captured Heidi's wording, so just that, and further that council authorize the manager of social services and housing to retain 10% of the total funding allocated for the program administration purposes to be used to retain a consultant using the request for proposal process or for hiring a contract employee for the implementation of expansion of licensed childcare in Haldimand and Norfolk counties.
I like it, Mr. Clerk. I'll move that recommendation, Mr. Chair. I think it's better if we have somebody for a full year to help out that whole team to go through this learning curve. I don't like the whole FTE thing, but I also don't like the whole consulting, throwing away $131,000, end up with a report that sits on there. Maybe they can help with some community hub programs.
We need a seconder.
Yes, I'd suggest you have a seconder, but also would you move all the other recommendations as well, and then we'll treat it as the main?
Absolutely.
All right, we have a motion on the floor that has been moved. I need a seconder before we discuss it. It's been seconded by Councillor Sonnenberg. Now the motion on the floor as changed is ready for discussion. Councillor Black.
Well, I did come prepared to move the recommendation, and now there's something different, and I really don't understand the implications of it. So could that be pointed out to me? What are the pros and cons of doing it this new way, through you to staff?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Black, should we be able to hire a temporary full-time employee for a minimum period of 1 year? We would bring that person on board. They would be paid fully out of this funding, so there would be no charge to the levy. They would undertake a review of all of our licensed childcare to determine where expansion opportunities exist. They would undertake a rate study to look at the rates that our licensed childcare, where those are at to determine affordability. And they would undertake, they would be the project lead in any childcare expansion projects that we would undertake in order to meet our goal of 100. One of the benefits of having a staff is that we would absolutely make sure that with this administration funding, they were undertaking this work. There could be, and I would be confident in saying that there would be opportunities for us to add some additional duties that would be related to childcare expansion that would help the goals of the overall team.
Well, it sounds like you prefer the contract better than the consultant, and at the end of the time, the contract person is gone, right?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Black, yes, it would be a temporary full-time employee.
Okay, so what I just said previously, you would prefer a contract versus a consultant?
Mr. Chair, I would say yes, that would be my
Okay,
preference.
thank you.
Councillor Columbus, and I haven't forgotten Councillor Oliver and Councillor Luke before the motion went on the floor, but I will come back to you after we finish the motion.
Mr. Chairman, that was my question. Councillor Black asked it, and it sounds like the contract position would be more efficient and effective from Heidi's point of view, so I will support the recommendation.
So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry. Oh, you please do, yes.
Thank you very much. Heidi, one of the questions I would have asked, now that we're talking about a staffing position as an option to a consultant, is the timing issue. We know it takes time to advertise, to recruit, to train, et cetera, et cetera. Is that going to change the timing of getting this community needs and assessment work done, or would it be a quicker process if you just put an RFP out and you get a consultant and you go ahead?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Oliver, I would say that the timing would probably be about the same.
Okay.
Because we either have to write a job description or write the scope and deliverables for an RFP. We have recruitment time on one side, we have RFP time that is advertised and evaluated on the other. So I think it's probably pretty comparable.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
And my second
Yes,
question,
please do.
Mr. Chair, doesn't specifically relate to this part of the motion, but I did want to ask relative to possible new spaces being created by a new service provider. Is that something, do you get contacted in your office by potential entrepreneurs who are interested in opening up a childcare facility in their home, or they've got a building that they could use? So do we have a potential waiting list of possible new childcare operators as compared to just expanding existing ones?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Oliver, we do get those kinds of inquiries and we provide them with as much information and support as we can. Sometimes, and then we also refer them to the ministry for the licensing component of it, because we have nothing to do with that. So if we get to a place where we're issuing an RFP for the development of new childcare, then yes, we would go back to that list, and we would also advertise the RFP in accordance with Norfolk County's purchasing policy.
Okay, thank you. And I think, Mayor Luke, it'd be fair to allow you to ask your question as
Yeah, it
well.
wasn't a question, it's a comment.
Okay, please.
On the motion, if I may, I think this is just terrific news for Haldeman Norfolk, that the ministry has come through with their promise to create preschool daycare spaces. The goal is very realistic, I think, knowing the waiting list at some of these local daycares. Not saying that there isn't work to get it going or even to create new, but certainly I think the goal of 25 on an average per year over the next 4 years will be very easily to obtain if the work is done, and it will be. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. You know what the motion is. Anybody want it read? If not, all in favor. Motion is carried. That brings us to our next item, which is staff report dealing with early years system quality enhancement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to council, this is another Children's Services report, and it is also a request for an exemption to the Norfolk County purchasing policy in order to allow a single source purchase. As the Consolidated Municipal Services Manager for Childcare, the Children's Services Program of the Social Services Division is responsible to the Ministry of Education to ensure high quality within our licensed childcare system. And also, we are mandated to provide professional development services to our to our registered early childhood educators who work in our licensed childcare centers. In order to fulfill that mandate, we have an option. We can either deliver that internally by adding people to our staff team, or we can outsource that to a service delivery partner. The association, the Affiliated Services for Children and Youth, or ASCII, that is associated with the City of Hamilton, is a real leader and in the area of licensed childcare quality assurance and continuous quality improvement. They have developed and copyrighted a program called Raising the Bar on Quality, which is used in Haldeman, Norfolk, and throughout the province of Ontario as a quality enhancement tool for licensed childcare. We would, because of their experience and because of their leadership in the area of quality enhancement with licensed childcare, we definitely think that they are the experts, the subject matter experts in this area. And in consultation with our colleagues in purchasing, staff respectfully submits to council that this meets the definition for a single source purchase. And for that reason, we would ask for an exemption to the purchasing policy in order to allow us to enter into a contract with ASCII for the delivery of this program. Council will see that the upset limit all in for this program is $200,000. That includes 2 staff from ASCII, not our staff, that would be dedicated to Haldeman and Norfolk for this purpose. It includes all of the program costs, all of the mileage, all of the fees associated with organizing and delivering professional development activities for licensed childcare throughout Haldeman and Norfolk. It also includes a one-time upset limit cost of $75,000 for the establishment of a resource library, and we would look at potentially 2 smaller libraries, one in Haldeman, one in Norfolk, that would include anything that we would need, including all of the resources to establish that. My final comment, Mr. Chair, before I take questions, is that I assure council that we take it very seriously when we come to council and ask for an exemption to the purchasing policy. It's not something that we do in social services and housing on a regular basis. We only do it when we consider that when we have considered all the options and feel that there is a justification for it. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this report kind of caught my eye at the advisory committee, and a couple of things, Heidi. One is, what is the time frame for spending this money? From when to when?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, our childcare funding is on a calendar year, so our year end is December 31st.
So we are going to spend the $275,000 between now and the end of the year.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, we would prorate that for the balance of the year that is left. And then the $200,000 for next year would be for the services for the entire year.
Well, you've lost me here. Is it $275,000 from now till December 31st? Or is it $275,000 for 2018?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, the $75,000 is a one-time cost that we would pay for this year. The resource library is a permanent fixture, so we would only incur those costs one time, and we would pay for that out of the 2017. The operating costs for the quality enhancement program and the professional development is an upset limit of $200,000 for a full year. So for 2017, of course, that would be prorated for the balance of the year that is left.
So it would go into partial 218 then for the 2 full-time staff?
Mr. Chair, yes, so the staff would start in 2017 and the program would continue into 2018.
Okay. I guess I look at the annual cost, this kind of, and I understand the purpose of the program, but it amazes me that the province would throw $275,000 out. Why wouldn't they, the Ministry of Education, just say, we're sending in 2 people from this group, we will pay for it at our cost? Like, it seems an odd way. They say, here's the money, spend it by a certain time, but then we go and say we're going to hire 2 people at $100,000 apiece. I realize that on page 115 it says the annual costs of the service at the bottom, 2 full-time equivalents from the Hamilton organization, I'll use that word, assigned to Haldeman Norfolk, cost resource, library, training, license, child care centers, computers, telephones, travel. It's quite a setup, but you'd think they would. Are these people not doing this job all along? Why do we got to get new computers and phones for these people?
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, to answer your first question about the ministry, the Ministry of Education provides childcare funding to municipalities as the Consolidated Municipal Services Manager, and then it's up to the municipality to determine how that money will be spent as long as it's in accordance with the funding guidelines. And this expenditure does fall within the funding guidelines, so it is an allowable expenditure of our 100% provincial funding. In childcare, I would say across the human services programs, being Ontario Works, Housing and Homelessness, and childcare, but childcare specifically, we are seeing the province strengthen the role of the municipalities, not take responsibility away. So we are not seeing an upload of responsibility for children's services and early years, for childcare and early years programming to the province. In fact, we're seeing the responsibilities transferring the other way. And again, the next report speaks more to that with the transfer of additional early years programming. To answer the second question, the organization is currently set up to provide similar services to licensed childcare within the City of Hamilton. To provide those services to Haldeman Norfolk, this would be considered an expansion for them. So they would be hiring new staff. Those staff would have to have workstations. They would have to have computers. They would be paid mileage because it's an expansion of their existing service. So all of those costs would become part of the service contract.
So when we're done with them, what will they do, lay them off? I assume, like, they're no longer our employees, correct?
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Brunton, they will not be our employees at any time. They are employees of the organization and of the ASCII, the Hamilton organization. It will be up to the service provider to hire the staff, to manage them, and to let them go when the work is done.
Okay, and the 75, on page 116, it says $75,000 to set up a resource library. Sounds like a lot of money, like, what are we gonna get in a library? I know we got a lot of libraries right now. Are we gonna, do we have a facility for this, or do we have to expand someplace to provide all this, all these resources?
Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Brunton, this is a new service, so we're at the very beginning stages of imagining what this would look like. So that $75,000 is an estimate, and it is what we consider to be the upset limit. We would have to look at all of the supplies and resources that would go along with setting up a library, including books, videos, training manuals. It could be we could have on-site equipment for ECEs to come in and do online training. So there could very well be computer stations set up where they could do that. We'd be looking at some of the capital requirements associated with that, like shelves and tables and chairs and that sort of thing.
So do we have a facility that can do all that? Existing? Or do we have to rent someplace?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, we don't currently have that. We would have to look at space, and I would suggest that we would start by looking at perhaps our existing licensed childcare centers to see if one of those facilities could house it. I would suggest that we would be avoiding renting space.
And you're sure these two people that we bring on for a year will not become full-time employees of ours?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, we would be entering into a service delivery contract with the Hamilton organization. They would never be Norfolk County staff. They are staff of the Hamilton organization.
Okay, and I guess my last question, if I may, is if we tendered this out or RFP'd it out to another organization, are there other groups out there that can do this type of programming?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, we are not aware of any. We are suggesting that this is appropriate as a single source because of the experience and the leadership that this organization has shown in this area.
So there's no other organization, so we're bound to go to this group.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Brunton, I cannot in all good conscience say that, but staff are not aware of other organizations. There very well may be other organizations out there.
Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Heidi, you mentioned this will be ongoing for one whole year?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, we would be working with purchasing to determine the length of the contract, but it would be a minimum of to the end of 2018. We would not be looking at, we may add in an option to renew for an additional year, provided that our 100% provincial childcare funding could support that.
Right, okay, yeah, I see that it was in the budget already for 2017, so that hasn't been spent yet.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I guess, are there synergies with this program compared to the report that we just dealt with? Would they not be working integrated?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, absolutely. The quality enhancement programs and the professional development activities that ASCII would be undertaking on our behalf would not only be available to our long-standing licensed childcare providers, but also to any new licensed childcare providers that came on board.
Okay, thank you. Now, in the end, what you're looking for is a quality enhancement program, and you've chosen this group, but could you not do it with a couple of your own? The province has given you $75,000 for setup, and couldn't you do it similar to like what we did on the very last report and everybody work together?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, we had not envisioned bringing this service in-house because it is not a service that we have historically provided in-house, so we don't have I don't want to say that we don't have subject matter experts on staff. Of course, our staff are knowledgeable about quality childcare programming. This organization is considered a leader in this area.
The last question, how many hours a week will they work? Because there's two of them that come in, right?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, that's something that still has to be negotiated.
It's not going to be like 10 hours for that money, is it?
Mr. Chair, we would make sure that the money was spent appropriately, and if it was not full-time, then we would not be spending a full $200,000 on that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Black, you're next.
Just wondered, I guess we've been dealing with, and this one in particular, it's provincially mandated, right?
Mr. Chair, we are mandated by the Ministry of Education to ensure quality within our childcare system and to provide professional development to support registered early child care educators within licensed childcare.
So we must do this.
Yes, we must
And-
do this work in some way.
Yep, and it's being funded 100% by the province.
That's correct.
And I will move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. You are Mayor Luke has seconded the motion. Before I call the question, Councillor Oliver was on speaking list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one or two questions about it, although I'm going to support the motion, I think. Heidi, on page 114 of our agenda, and page 2, I guess, of your report, the bottom paragraph talks about the existing system that we have been using, the raising the bar on quality system to evaluate and assess our childcare providers. And the line that struck me was the fifth line in the bottom paragraph, where it says, the review which the childcare providers produce annually is reviewed by a team of peers who volunteer for this purpose. So in other words, we've been doing this kind of evaluation for the last 10 years, essentially at, and I may not be quite right at this, but essentially at no expense to us as the municipality. It's been the child care providers themselves who profile their work annually, and then a volunteer peer group that evaluates that and says, well, yes, you're doing well, or you're not doing so well. In a simple way, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I would say that overall that is correct.
Yeah.
I don't have specifics, but I would say that we would incur costs associated
Okay.
with that
All right.
and associated with ongoing professional development.
All right. Where I was leading to, though, again, going back to what could in fact become an annual expense of $200,000 to utilize the services of this third-party service provider to do the evaluations for us, is that new money that we've just been given, or is it money within our existing budget that in previous years you spent elsewhere?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Oliver, I would say that it is a combination. Our funding in childcare has been increasing from one year to the next. It is, so with that increased envelope, we're able to support this initiative. I would also say that it is a consolidation of one-off programming that we have done in the past, that we really think that there would be benefit to having a more comprehensive program for our licensed childcare system.
And you yourself professionally are satisfied that this is the most cost-effective way to accomplish all of what you've just described to us?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Oliver, I am very confident in this organization and in their ability to deliver. I have not officially costed out what it would look like for us to deliver this in-house, but I am confident in saying that I believe it would cost us at least this much. And we are not the kinds of leaders in doing this work that ASCII is.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for the early years system quality enhancement by Councillor Black. Mayor Luke, all in favor? Motion has been carried. That brings us to our next staff report, Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centres.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to council. This last report is also related to children's services. And again, it is an exemption to the purchasing policy for a time-limited exemption. Beginning January 1st, 2018, the Consolidated Municipal Services Managers will be responsible for managing and delivering the Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centres. In our community, that means those centres that have been traditionally called the Ontario Early Years Centres, that have been run by Haldeman Norfolk Reach and funded directly from the Ministry of Education to Reach, will become the responsibility of the municipality. The funding will come to the municipality, and the responsibility for managing those services will come to the municipality. We have been undertaking the development of a community plan in consultation with our Best Start network planning table to identify the locations of the services, to identify what types of services will be delivered, to identify our service delivery model. And we will be undertaking a request for proposal process to identify a permanent operator of our Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centres. We do, however, require a 9-month contract with the existing provider, Haldeman Norfolk Reach, in order to see us through a transition plan. The reason for that was, is that we were delayed in getting our funding allocations from the Ministry of Education, so we could not finalize our community plans. No municipality could, and the Ministry of Education has actually delayed the submission of the plans from the spring to the end of September. At that point, once we submit the final OEYC FC community plan to the Ministry of Education, we then have to wait for them to review it and approve it before we can go forward with our permanent plan. So in the interim, we are asking for council approval to enter into a 9-month agreement with Haldeman Norfolk Reach to maintain status quo programming in what is now the Ontario Early Years Centres, which will be rebranded as of January 1st to the Ontario Early Years Child and Family Centres. And then we will undertake that RFP process. It's really important that we do this in order to ensure stability within the early learning system. And Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's actually, I'm not sure who's going to answer this because it's under the financial service comments on page 121. Second, or the very last sentence, staff will also be providing a subsequent report in the near future, outlining community plan. What month is that future?
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Height, we will hear, the timeline is as follows. The plan, subject to council approval, will go to the ministry for the September 29th deadline. It will go to our October advisory committee, and then will come to Norfolk Council and committee, the first counseling committee in November. And the Ministry of Education is aware that until council approval happens in November, that the report that they get by the September deadline is draft pending council approval. Otherwise, we would have to be submitting the report more than a month in advance in order to get through our advisory committee process and through the council process.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, one last comment. As you'll notice under the financial services comment, under the Norfolk section, it appears that our finance department has definitely stepped up their game when it comes to commenting, and I always appreciate that. So thank you for that.
And of course, you'd like to move it? I thought you would. And you're going to second it, Councillor Brunton? Okay. Oh, you can ask all you want. We have it moved and seconded, and now, Councillor Brunton, ask away.
My only question is when we see our budget down the line here, it says 100% funded by the province, the way I read it. So we won't have any tax dollars of our own going towards it, other than what we all pay to the province. I guess it just tells me why the province is broke. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor that's been moved by Councillor Height, seconded by Councillor Brunton. All in favor? That motion has carried. That brings us to our next item and next staff report. We're going to change courses here and go over to accidental death and dismemberment. And I think that would be you, Mr. Meisner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to council, I bring you report EBS 1748, 2017 Extended Health and Dental Long-Term Disability, Life Insurance, and Accidental Death and Dismemberment Insurance Renewals. With me today, I have our Health, Wellness, and Benefits Coordinator, Nicole Vansicle. As of July 1st, 2017, the Corporation of Norfolk County's benefit plans were subject to renewal. The purpose of this report is to provide information relative to the renewal of the benefit plans and to attain Norfolk County Council approval of the negotiated renewal. In conjunction with the 2015 renewal, Mosey & Mosey, the corporation's benefit consultants, conducted a market survey for all benefits to ensure that the overall program continued to be underwritten on a competitive basis. As a result of that survey, the group life and the accidental death and dismemberment rates for this year were both locked in and guaranteed the same as the previous year. For the 2017 budget, LTD or long-term disability premiums were expected to increase, as were extended health care and dental premiums. However, due to a decrease in the average age of the workforce due to retirements and a lower number of claims as per the standard, LTD premiums have resulted in no increase. Total extended health care claim dollars increased by 1.1% over the previous period. Prescription drugs accounted for 69% of all extended health care claims. This is a decrease from last year's renewal where prescription drugs accounted for 70.2% of all extended health care claims. And this resulted in a slight decrease in prescription drugs costs overall of 0.3%. Total dental claims dollars increased by 6% over the same period. Despite an increase in the cost of these claims, Mosey & Mosey was able to negotiate a zero increase to the extended health care rates and dental at this renewal, providing that Norfolk County maintains its current balance in the unrestricted deposit account, or UDA. Travel or out-of-country emergency benefits have been subjected to an approximate increase of $3,024 per month. The reasons for the increase include increased liability costs in the industry and a growing number of early retirees still covered by benefits. The impact on the entire plan is 0.9%. It should be noted that over the past few years, Norfolk County has negotiated cost containments such as cost sharing of premiums or elimination of early retiree benefits for employees that are hired after specific dates. Overall, as noted in the financial comments of the report, the budget impact for 2017 of the benefit renewal will be favorable in the amount of $44,000. I am available for any questions if you have regarding the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meisner. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question through you to staff. How much did Mosey & Mosey benefit consultants charge us for the negotiations?
Through the chair, we have a contract with them, and I believe the amount they charge per year is $14,000.
Why don't we do it?
Through the chair, there is a lot of work that goes into that, and they do have the expertise and they are in tune with the benefit industry. They have a lot of the industry information. They're the ones that provide us with the reports. So we just don't have the expertise internally to be able to do that. If we did, we would have to hire more staff.